Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Seepersod coming to you from the campus of Binghamton University. Welcome to today's webinar, Search Engine Hacking, the Newest Cybersecurity Threat. This is part of our Binghamton Learning Network webinar series, and that itself is part of our many lifelong learning programs that we have through the Alumni Association. As I always do, I'll go ahead and put our website address up on the screen. If you'd like to know more about what we have, check out binghamton.edu/alumni, binghamton.edu/alumni. We had an awesome tier talk that was part of homecoming weekend just a couple of weeks ago. You'll find a link to that video on the alumni homepage and all sorts of links to great things that we offer, from lifelong learning to in-person and virtual events, ways that you can volunteer at the university. Check it out, of course, after the program. Watch the great content that we'll have for you in the next hour, and then visit our website. I'll pull the address back up at the end of the program, and I encourage you to take a look at that when you can. And the obligatory housekeeping matters will be taken care of now. If you have questions, we want your questions. We like this to be interactive. You can send them in as a comment on Facebook or the microsite. I'm going to pull up my email address from time to time, so you don't have to write it down right this second. You'll see it come up again and again during the program. If you have questions, send them in. We'll mix them in where we can. Start now, start whenever you want. We like this to be fun and interactive. So now on to the topic at hand for today. We're going to talk about using search engines to hack. You're going to see it is surprisingly very easy to do. And we do this not per se to teach you how to do it. That's not the goal of this program. But by seeing how easy it is, hopefully that makes you a little bit nervous enough to take action to protect yourself. And it'll be one of the things that we talk about here in this webinar this afternoon. So at this time, I'm pleased to introduce our featured speaker, Stark Hashman from the class of 2020, who comes to us today from Brooklyn, New York. And very excited to have you here. And you see something like Google Dorking and search engine hacking and cybersecurity. It makes you very interested to learn more. And so thank you so much for joining and sharing your knowledge with us here in the alumni family.
Thank you so much for the intro, and thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm very excited to teach everyone about search engine hacking / Google Dorking, which I'm sure many people have not yet heard of. I'm currently a law grad at CA Goldberg. We're taking down a lot of predators, harassers. As you'll learn, this is a very convenient tool for people who have malicious ideas in their minds and would like to use technology to do malicious activities. And I'm very excited to share this information with you guys. So let's get started. We all know what a regular search is and what it looks like. For example, if you use Google, you just search a term, a phrase, a name to get results. This is a regular search I conducted to look for law schools in New York if someone is seeking to attend law school in New York. As you can see, all of the top results are ads and are irrelevant content. They are law schools in Texas, Virginia, online law schools. So you're not really getting exactly what it is that you're actually searching for when using these search engines in a regular manner. So what does it mean to Google Dork something? As you can see, what's typed into the search bar is it's a formula instead of a term, a query, a question, a name. It's a strategic formula that gets you much more specific results. This was in the past referred to as Google Dorking or just Dorking. Now we're trying to refer to it as search engine hacking to be more general. So now I am conducting a search engine hack for law schools in New York. And as you can see, it actually gives much more relevant information on the first page in comparison to a regular search would. So I conducted a Google Dorking demo, not a live one, because I wanted to filter out results and make sure everything being shown was very safe and secure, and to make sure not to violate anyone's privacy. But I wanted to show you guys just how easy this is. So a search for classified files, this is what I typed into the search engine right here like this. And as you can see, these are a ton of classified documents that government officials, I'm sure, are not aware are exposed online for non-hackers and just the average individual to see. Passwords. This is a query that I typed into the search engine to look for passwords to show you guys how easily exposed this private information really is online. As you can see in the search results, there is a lot that comes up when you search for these kinds of queries. And I clicked one of the links, and this is what came up, which was just a massive list, one of countless, of people's usernames and passwords just leaked online, not reported, not taken down. So these things are just very commonly indexed online. And if you are one of the people who has your username and password exposed, you very likely don't know that it's exposed online for the average user to obtain. Web cameras. This is a common web camera search. I entered it into Google. These are the links that come up. I clicked some of them for you guys. This is just some sort of town square. As you can see, people were walking around in it. This is a traffic cam, one of many. This one was super blurry and low quality. And this is some guy with an umbrella walking in the rain. As you can assume, these searches can get a lot more personal and a lot more dangerous, especially given the Internet of Things and the amount of devices we now have to protect our homes and to protect our security that are connected to cameras, and also, which we don't commonly know, are connected to the internet and easy to search for and find. This one I just thought was really cute to include because there's, for some reason, a camera of a bird, and I really enjoyed that, and I thought that you guys would as well. So this is a go dork yourself activity just so that you guys can learn how easy it is to find information you did not know was exposed about yourself online yourself. So given likely time constraints, I'd like you to screenshot this page if you're interested in searching for yourself. And I highly recommend the first search, where you search for your password in quotations to see if your password is leaked online. Because people I know have actually found out that theirs was, and they never would have known that if they did not know of the presence of search engine hacking.
I'll jump in with a question, if you don't mind, as I see this the slide on Go Dork Yourself, and you talk about searching for yourself to see what's out there. What did you find that was out there for you when doing this?
So for me, a long while back, I actually learned about Google Dorking in order to protect myself, to protect friends and others from things like cyberbullying or harassment. And for me, I just noticed I was getting hacked like the average user, the average individual, a lot more often. So I searched for my password like 8, 9, 10 years back, a long time ago, and I found it exposed online. I constantly reported the leaked password and username database that was out there with many other people's accounts out there, and it was not de-indexed for at least 8 years, which was very damaging, very scary. So I definitely recommend that you guys do this. Also, a ton of websites obviously leaking addresses, phone numbers. You'll find a lot that you likely didn't consent to being online, displayed online about yourself. So I highly recommend getting back to this slide later if you have time. So as you can see, Googling or searching is just the tip of the iceberg, and there is a vast and potentially dangerous wealth of information that is underneath the surface that many people don't know how to access that could be super dangerous to the average individual. Benefits of search engine hacking include obviously getting more relevant results, as I showed you before, less ads and sponsored content, so less biased content as well. It's very useful for students, researchers, journalists, the average user. For me, I'm currently a law grad, as I mentioned before, and it's very useful for me in conducting searches about cases currently going on. So it is very beneficial to conduct a search and to conduct it in a more relevant and beneficial way. What are the cons of search engine hacking? I'm sure you're already wondering. As you can see, I typed in some malicious questions that I figure a user who might use this in a negative way would search for. How to Google dork credit card information, how to Google dork for social security card numbers. And what I wanted to show you about this slide is the vast amount of results that come up for these queries, which means this is how much information is currently out there when people search for that. So if there's someone who's bad and they want to, get your credit card information, this is how many results are popping up for that query. Now we're going to talk about some real life examples that I found through my own research in which these techniques were very likely used or were openly used to commit various crimes. The Bowman Avenue hack. So the Bowman Avenue Dam is located in New York, and it was hacked by an Iranian hacker solely through finding it via Google Dorking. And as you can see from the headlines, this was actually one of the only, aside from the next one that I'll discuss, cases that openly admitted and discussed the usage of search engine hacking and advanced search techniques in order to find this dam and to hack into the system, which could have been very, very dangerous if the sluice gate wasn't shut down at the time for repairing, because the hacker could have had access to open that and damage a ton of New York property and families. The CIA compromise. So 70% of the CIA was actually compromised through the use of search engine hacking, which was very wild. And we ended up losing 60 CIA assets working on behalf of the United States due to this compromise. There are countless webcam hacks. As I showed you the ease of accessing webcams online, you could only imagine how stalkers, harassers, and malicious individuals would just play with this tool and find webcams. And in this case, with Miss Teen USA, her webcam was accessed, and she was one of many, over 100 sextortion victims who were harassed constantly, and their lives were made to be living hell due to a stalker being able to very easily find and access their web camera. This is another very well-known webcam hack too. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of the Ring doorbell hacks, but people had these cameras in their children's rooms to be able to watch and monitor their children. Little did they know, hackers were able to very, very easily access these web cameras and then begin to talk to the children as well. So they started asking them questions, talking to and bothering the children, which is very scary to think about.
I'll jump in with a question we got sent to us through the Facebook comments. Why are we calling this hacking dorking? Dorking is just a way to search Google's data in depth. This is how Google search is designed.
So people have called it dorking in the past because ethical hackers actually are originally the people that found out about this technique, in particular Johnny Long. And the ethical hacking, I guess, groups would refer to it as dorking because of the kind of joke that you're kind of a dork if you're exposed online and have no idea about it. So it's kind of a joke term, if that makes sense. And then that term just took off. Yeah, I agree that you are supposed to use search engines in a more specific, targeted, and successful way. However, the average individual doesn't know what that entails and what it exposes. So that's why we believe search engine hacking is maybe a better term for this use, especially because most victims, they don't know that they're victims, and I don't think it should be expected and solely put on the average individual to know about something that isn't highly publicized at all.
Now, looking at the slide that you have here and the Ring camera shots that are very, very easy to obtain, it's a frightening thought, as myself as a parent, but you don't have to be a parent to find this scary. What can we do about this?
So suggestions of what we can do about this will go later on in the slides. I'll be mentioning that at the end of the presentation. But for cameras, I very specifically tell everyone, and I'm glad you asked right now, purchase a camera cover. If you do not intend to be on camera at the time you are using a device, whether it's a cell phone or a laptop, put your camera cover on, because you never know who is going to be able to access that. And I honestly, as for right now, while the devices are unsecured, I don't really recommend things like Ring that might be connected to the internet to be in a child's room, especially given the capabilities of communication through it. But I'm just paranoid, and as I'll mention later, there aren't many alternative measures that can be put in place at the moment. But I'll be discussing further later on other things that we can do for now in this period of time. But in the meantime, purchase camera covers. I highly recommend that.
Just one more question, at the risk of this sounding like a dumb question, but maybe others have it, and I get to be the one to ask it out loud, is that, okay, we get the camera cover, that takes care of the visual, but what about the sound? Could that come through as well? And so it's covered up, but is somebody still listening to me?
Yeah, so that's definitely a huge and very relevant issue, given systems such as Ring doorbells, right, and Amazon Alexa services. Like, for example, in some of Amazon's privacy and advertisement notices, they note that they may use recordings, video recordings, audio recordings from other Amazon services such as Ring or Amazon Alexa in order to find you, target you, and sell you things, which we might assume is not dangerous, but there currently are some lawsuits going on where Amazon had allegedly targeted children with, certain struggles and have advertised to them suicide kits. So those are some ongoing cases that discuss just how dangerous these issues can come. Because so far for audio, there might be nothing to do, at least to my knowledge. Doxing and stalking, I'm sure people could assume how this could be a tool that is very prone to abuse from people who want to stalk others, harass them, and dox them online. For those who don't know what doxing is, it is the finding and posting of someone's sensitive information online. Even if it's already online through search engines and more advanced searches, it's like plastering it all over the internet for the average user and the average individual to see. In 2013, many celebrities became victims of doxing. This has been ongoing throughout the past years, though. This is just one of many instances where their social security numbers, their financial data is posted online. So people who are likely going to have stalkers or people who are after them, people in the public eye, even the average individual who might have a stalker or harasser of their own, you may be a victim of doxing, of someone who is not capable of being a technical hacker yet, but they are able to use these search engines in an advanced way. They could find very personal information of yours and then post it for the whole world to see. TikTok users doxed the Supreme Court after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. This became a very interesting case to observe from my end because many people were wondering, and there were many news articles speculating how people were able to, children on TikTok were able to obtain such personal information, private information of the Supreme Court. Some people were posting their credit card numbers, their addresses. Clearly, they have more means to be more protected than the average individual. But as someone who knew of search engine hacking and just how easy it really is, it was an obvious connect for me. Okay, it's a child. They're probably not a trained hacker. Here's how they did it. It was likely search engine hacking. Homicide can even be committed. This is Judge Esther Salas from New Jersey. And she had a case with someone who unfortunately came to her house, found her address, dressed up as a delivery driver, and opened fire in her house, killing her son and wounding her husband. So if we are not careful with this and what information is exposed online and what we are able to know about that information, it can literally lead to death and physical harm when people are able to be targeted in these ways and when people aren't able to protect their private or sensitive information in the ways that they deserve to.
So I'll jump in with another question because as we roll through some of the last slides and you talk about doxing, and I think about information that's readily available just because it's considered to be public information. Let's just say you buy a house. So Steve buys a house. I know where in the city of Binghamton it is. I can not only know the address, I know what he paid for it. I know who his mortgage is with. I know how much he borrowed and, things like that. And so some of this stuff is out there. A lot of this is out there already, but, I think, what I'm hearing also is that, it's far beyond the things that would be readily available to the public. Like my social security number, hopefully is not able to be found easily, but could be with the right, the right strokes of the key, it sounds like.
Exactly. And I think that that's why this is such a seemingly controversial topic, is because we do have access to publicly available information, like things like criminal records or, like you said, deeds to houses. However, this has made it just so much easier than it should be. And like you said, there's the information that just, in my opinion, at least, shouldn't be publicly available, like social security numbers, passwords, cameras, etc. On the other hand, for certain individuals, either individuals who are in the public eye or individuals who are currently victims of stalkers and harassers, even if generally it's accepted that their address, their phone number should be publicly available, I believe there maybe should be an argument for special protections when needed. If someone's a victim of harassment and stalking, should it necessarily be their stalker's right to be able to find them if they move, or find their contact information and be able to continuously harass them? That's another question, and that seems to be the more controversial end of this whole debate. On the other hand, I think we can all agree that webcams connected to children's bedrooms, or just people's webcams in general, shouldn't necessarily be displayed to the whole world when the user of that webcam does not know of that and is not knowingly consenting to that. So what does the law currently say about search engine hacking? For me, I was very recently a student in law school. I just graduated, and I was very curious about this because I think the average user is curious about whether this is legal or not, because when you're seeing that search engine hacking is being advertised as something you could use to find social security numbers, passwords, etc., it's easy to ask, how is this legal? Is this legal, or am I breaking the law if I'm using a more advanced search? So the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is the main federal law that discusses the act of hacking, or obtaining unauthorized access to information. So like breaking and entering into a computer or someone's account that you shouldn't have access to, or exceeding authorized access. So let's say you're an employee at a company and you usually have a login to all this sensitive client information, and then you get fired and you keep continuing to access that and use it for illegal means. That would be exceeding authorized access. However, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act doesn't mention what happens if you access information that's displayed publicly, even if it's out of the public eye. If it's just displayed online, readily available, there's nothing in the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act that addresses that. However, a lot of the cases that I mentioned earlier and how it could be used in a dangerous or malicious way, they tend to be charged under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act because it's all we have. And this leads to a whole host of problems, which I'll discuss later on. On top of that, and the fact that the federal anti-hacking law doesn't address this issue and these concerns, there are also some laws in place that protect search engines when they're displaying content, whether it is dangerous and not really consented by the person whose information it is, or regardless, these laws allow them to get out of trouble with that. The DMCA regards copyright and basically says that a search engine isn't responsible for displaying copyright material. And then Section 230 is notoriously used by big tech to protect against any personal liability when things go wrong or when their product is being abused or misused, which is definitely something to think about. If the victims are the ones that have to be keeping an eye out because people with more resources, more money, more technological capabilities, and more power and control are the ones that actually can be protected under the law when they are knowingly displaying something. Like as I mentioned earlier with the whole password username leak, after reporting that for 8 years, constantly it was ignored, or Section 230 was cited as a reason as to why they shouldn't care. My assumption is that, my opinion is that platforms should have some sort of responsibility to protect their users, especially if they're the ones displaying and knowingly displaying private and sensitive information, especially if they have tools to report and you're reporting constantly for years. Section 230 is a law that says platforms and websites, for example, aren't responsible for third-party postings. So if they index something that's super dangerous, super harmful, that's a third party that posted it. So Section 230 and the First Amendment will protect from that, from any issues that might arise. So given these two issues within the law, big issues, there is currently a lack of protection for victims of the issues that I've discussed earlier in this presentation. On the other hand, there are also countless dangers to ethical hackers, security researchers, journalists, students, everyone who's using the search engines in a more advanced way. When I was doing all of this research, I also researched the other end. I'm very passionate about protecting ethical hackers who use their abilities for good and to protect the average individual. When I saw that all of those cases were being brought under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which I mentioned doesn't address search engine hacking, I realized that there's a lot of ways to crack down on this type of misuse, even though it's not addressed in the law. So we see a lot of things like over prosecution, abuse of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, where it is applied to countless situations, even situations involving ethical hackers who should not be prosecuted under that law in many instances. Huge lacks of clarity as to what is legal and what isn't legal, which is why I've researched this topic a lot and published the first publication on it. And unreasonable punishments, where you're making an example out of ethical hackers, because a lot of people in the government aren't also very tech aware, and some people can't distinguish the difference between an ethical hacker and an unethical hacker. So there are times when ethical hackers expose a data leak or something that the company itself and the search engine itself is not making customers or people who are victim of that aware of. And then they might become the target of this. So as passionate as I am to protect the victims of these crimes in some way, I'm also equally passionate to protect the users of these tools for good, because we deserve to be searching and knowing what is legal and isn't legal to search for and to find. And we also deserve to know what information of ours is exposed online that is going to likely be used maliciously by hackers, stalkers, etc.
I want to dive in just really quick a little bit more on the concept of the ethical hacker, because I think probably some people hear that and they're like, well, what? Like, how could that be? But it seems that that's, something where somebody's looking for vulnerabilities, not to exploit them, but to shore up security, sort of like walking around a physical brick and mortar building and you're pulling on the door handles or checking to make sure the windows are locked to make sure that you're in good stead security wise. Is it the same thing, but electronically here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I apologize for not clarifying that. I'm getting used to what terms are and aren't as commonly known. So ethical hackers use their hacking skills for good. So if there is a company with a website, they may accidentally stumble upon a vulnerability, and then they will let that website know, hey, blank is exposed on your website, or hey, your website happens to be very easily hackable, like here's how you can fix it. So ethical hackers are very commonly hired to find these vulnerabilities for people, or they might just find it themselves. Like if people are just Google Dorking and then they find that a website has confidential data exposed, they commonly let the website know and they warn them about that. But there are times where the website will see an ethical hacker as a villain, maybe because they didn't have the best security systems in place originally. Maybe they don't have the tools or want to spend on fixing it. And most likely because they probably don't want to let people know that their data was exposed or unintentionally leaked through their website. So they'd rather at times ignore the problem and vilify the ethical hacker who found it basically just saying, oh, they hacked us and then they exposed this data when it was just exposed in the first place and brought to their attention. So there's times when then it gets into a dance of if this ethical hacker is going to stay ethical or if their morals are going to make them want to post about this publicly so people can actually know that their data is exposed, which is why I think it's important to protect ethical hackers under our law, make it clear under our law what is and is not legal and what they can and can't get in trouble for, because if not, they have like less motivation to be conducting these assessments, using their tools for good, because they're constantly getting in trouble for doing so and vilified when they're not the villain. Does that clear up what an ethical hacker does?
I think so. And as you were going through that, I think about probably by now, all of us have received a letter in the mail from a credit card company or somebody we're doing business with where they say, guess what? We had a data breach. And then, okay, wonderful. So I get the free credit monitoring that comes with it. So I never wind up signing up for it because I know the data is going to get breached somewhere or another. So I just wait to get a letter and then just do the free membership that they have. But there are the data breaches we know about because they get you get the notifications. But it's scary to think about what's out there that we don't know about yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's vulnerable. Somebody could find it. Somebody's finding it. We just don't know. We haven't been made aware of that yet.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of ethical hackers actually get into trouble, and where I see them getting more into the gray area, like white hat, good guys, ethical hackers, gray hat, good and ethical, but maybe not fully legal, and then black hat is not ethical, not legal. So the white hats kind of transition a little to the gray hats when a company isn't letting people know. Like I personally know about many different apps that I've used and put my information in, or websites I've used and put my information in that have been breached and the data has been exposed online. But I surprisingly don't know that from being made aware. I know it because I'm interested in the tech community and I learned through word of mouth, which is a huge issue, because that means majority of these data breaches, data leaks, even if the company finds out about it, you're not very likely to find out. You're not. And we don't have many protections in the United States compared to Europe or California, which I think we should. But it's very, very likely that there are many more instances in which your data has been leaked or breached and you don't even know about it.
It's like if you came to the university after hours, let's just say 2 o'clock in the morning, and you go to a bunch of different buildings and you're pulling on the door handles, and the police come up and say, "What are you doing?" They may not be so likely to believe that you're testing for vulnerabilities and trying to do something good. So, like with many other things, the intent is a very, very difficult thing to judge.
Yeah, it's actually weird though and interesting because it normally doesn't come from people in the process of testing getting picked up on. It's normally what happens is after the ethical hacker reveals what happened, where tensions start to arise. Like there was a Microsoft Azure's data breach pretty recently, and there was a ethical hacking company who made them aware of how many people's data was leaked through that breach, and they got into a huge like public altercation with this company that was really just trying to help out. So that's surprisingly where all of the tensions arise from ethical hackers trying to expose these data leaks, is from the companies themselves. Because to be honest, in my opinion, these companies and us who have our data leaked, we're all in the same boat of not knowing the ease of finding this sensitive information. We're all in the same boat of not really knowing of the presence of search engine hacking at all. So when people find information from a company and then search engines are protected and websites are protected under all of these laws that I discussed earlier, the company then that also likely was a victim and is also likely very surprised that their website was vulnerable and that the data was exposed online, even if they engaged in pretty decent business practices, the victim now is the villain. And they're the ones that get sued when the data is breached and the data is leaked.
I will say for those watching on Facebook, you may have noticed a comment came up and there's a link to an article that talked about ethical hackers who were arrested not long ago. So definitely worth checking that out when you feel inclined to do so.
Yeah, thank you guys for sharing resources and for asking questions. I really, really appreciate it. So if the law fails to address these issues, what can currently be done? So there's really not much. I would say the reason I'm very passionate about educating on this topic is because there's not much protection for us legally at the moment. So if you are someone who doesn't know of the existence of search engine hacking or Google Dorking, that is the number one thing that can make you vulnerable. Because if you do know of it and you go back to the go dork yourself slide, or you could even reach out to me and ask about good ways to dork yourself to find information. If you don't know of that, you're not going to know that your data is exposed. You're not going to know that your password was leaked. You're going to get hacked from that. You're not going to know your webcam is accessible online, and then you might wrongfully not have a camera cover on. So I'd say step number one is to learn more about Google Dorking, learn more about search engine hacking, and use it to your advantage. Search for yourself, search for your loved ones, and find out if you're exposed online, because sadly, currently, the victims are the ones that the burden is put on in order to protect themselves. Especially if you have a business or a company, you are the ones that are going to be gone after in court, given the protections that the search engines currently have in place for them. So it's important to ensure that your security process and that your website building and your cybersecurity practices include Google Dorking and running a lot of Google Dorks and using the Shodan search engine in order to see if you guys have any private or sensitive data unintentionally exposed online. That's very important. So step one is knowledge. Step two is advocacy. Currently, not many people know about this at all. I am, to my knowledge, the first researcher who has published about the intersections of law and this technique. I'm not sure if it has been built upon since. Hopefully it does. However, advocating for some sort of change, some sort of clarity within the law, within the justice system, advocating for a reduction of Section 230, which allows websites and search engines to escape liability in situations where they had the resources, had the knowledge, and honestly should be liable. Advocating for that to be limited makes a huge, huge difference. Advocating maybe for a change in the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act as well. It is way too vague, is way too broad. Protecting ethical hackers, raising awareness about what they do so that maybe the court and the justice system has more knowledge when they face an instance where an ethical hacker is getting in trouble for something that isn't even noted in the law yet. All of these things, public advocacy, and really just hoping that some type of change happens in the legal landscape, putting out research towards that is always very useful. So I'd say mainly learning to protect yourself for now is all that can be done. Doing your research, learning how to use it yourself, and spreading awareness, posting online about it, reposting like publications on it. Looking into what has already been researched, what has already been checked out, and broadcasting that. That so far is all that can be done. And on the last slide, I'm gonna have my email address. If anyone has any ideas they want to send me, if they want to collaborate on this issue, feel free to reach out to me. I'm a resource as well. And yeah, all we have the power to do as of now is be knowledgeable, try to protect ourselves because there aren't many other protections in place, and to try to advocate for better regulations, for better protections under the law, because the US is currently lacking a bit, to say the least, in that area. So yeah, here is my address, my Twitter and Instagram, and my LinkedIn, not my address, my email address. Sorry, it's been a long day already. If anyone wants to reach out about collaborating, about educating on these issues, I'm very passionate about it, and I will join you in that fight.
We'll leave these pieces of contact information up on the screen. In fact, I'll go full screen with the slides. Star and I are still here, I assure you that, but this makes it a little bit easier to read. And it's interesting how we came upon this as a topic for a webinar, because it's a little different from some of the things we normally do. And I'd interviewed Star for the university magazine, and the story will appear in next spring's issue. So everybody by now should have got the fall issue of the magazine. So the next one that comes out will have the story about Star and the work that she's done. And but this really brings it to life more, to see it and have it talked about in this way versus just a standard article in a magazine. And one of the things that really struck me the most, about our conversation when we're putting the story together, I don't think we touched on this much or at all at the beginning, is that you're one of the first people to dive into studying this. And so, as much as this has been a threat, for a while, this is now starting to get out in the forefront because of the work of people like you getting this out in front of people and having conferences. Talk about some of the work you've done in outreach in getting this information out to people, because there's not a lot of it going. It's so new, not a lot of people are touching it yet, and so that really makes this even more important.
Yeah, so I was very curious, as many others are, in how this is being used, what crimes have been committed using this technique, what happens to ethical hackers or regular individuals who use this technique. And to me, step one, while I was starting my research, was to somehow get in contact with the person who first invented or coined the term Google Dorking, Johnny Long. So I found out how to contact him. I reached out to him a ton of times, and we scheduled a call. When I spoke to him, I learned about how ethical hackers came across this technique, what they originally first used it for, how it's useful, how it is detrimental, how ethical hackers have tried to collaborate with search engines to protect us, to protect the average individual who doesn't know of this existence. And he spoke about how a lot of earlier efforts, unfortunately, have failed. And Johnny was a huge inspiration for me in my research. And he did a really great job at getting the word out there originally, doing a lot of talks on this topic, talks on how it could be used maliciously and how we should protect ourselves from it. And what he said is, unfortunately, ultimately, not much has been done. He gave me an example of Google was made aware, for example, that people were using a very specific Google Dork, or search engine hack query, in order to obtain credit card numbers. Finally, after a lot of back and forth, that query was disabled. However, what he noted is right away another query popped back up in which people could search for the same thing and find the same thing. So this base level, relying on search engines to just do the right thing, or relying on websites to do the right thing and remove things that might be dangerous, has not been working out. Because currently, when the law is on their side, they likely don't want to comply with requests. They don't want to be easily helping people to protect from these issues, because the more they give in and help us, the more they believe they'll be obligated to. So they currently love and benefit off of the state of the laws, which are dangerous to the average user, dangerous to ethical hackers, dangerous to all of us, which is why I hope that there's a lot of advocacy for changes within the law itself. But my step one was talking to Johnny when I was doing this research and hearing him tell me that I was on a really good path and that hopefully I can help push what he started and make that needed change, was really inspiring to hear from someone who knows a lot more about this than I do. Hearing from the ethical hacker community as well, which is very, very supportive, very kind, because they're not used to seeing people in law being on their side or helpful or even caring about the work that they do, when they could be a huge tool to help us in many cases. I think it was surprising to them. And mainly like my connection with the ethical hacker community and Johnny inspired me to finish the thing, publish the first research on it. And then we hosted an event at Brooklyn Law School as well, which was very educational. We had a ton of legal and cybersecurity scholars there who were discussing in a panel about how this could be used for good, how it could be used for bad, what we see potential for change in. It was a very interesting conversation. So now I just continue to speak on this topic and educate people. I was a part of the first, I believe it's the New York County Lawyers Association, CLE, for cybersecurity law. And I got to talk about this topic there, which was amazing, getting to educate lawyers on it. And then as well for the Women of Legal Tech Summit from the ABA. That was awesome too. So for now, that's what I'm doing. I'm hoping to connect to more people who are interested in this and passionate about making a change in the law. My law firm as well has done a lot of work to figure out Section 230 and the abuses that come through that as well. And I am really proud to see the very, very just like notable changes that have been made. And I think that if anyone can do it, they can. And they have been able to basically find ways to get around some of the many hurdles. So I believe that all of the amazing resources that I've been blessed to find will eventually find a way. So I still hold on to hope, and I will continue to do so.
Well, that conversation with your professor always stayed with me, where he said, in short, you get to blaze the trail on this. And it would have been so much easier to take something that's already existing in the case law and work with it, but probably not as much fun. I said, apart from the difficulty, I'm sure there had to be a lot of frustrations with having to do work that nobody else has done before and not have a base to draw from. At the same time, that, what a great selling point to go out, graduate law school, go out for a job and say, look, I'm working on this and almost nobody else in the country is doing this right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And for context, for those who don't know, long story short, I started doing this research for a project in a cybersecurity class. And I went to my professor and I said, I know this is being used maliciously, but I can't find it mentioned in any case law. I can't find it on the surface, but I know it exists. And after talking to him for a while, he said, Star, you're the expert now. Like, you have to trust yourself. You're not going to be citing to things. You're going to be creating the thing that people cite to. And he said, you could either choose that harder path where there's no current case law, no current recognition of it, no current sources on the intersection, or, and have it be hard to do this assignment, or you could do something easy and something that there's already things out there for. And I'm passionate about a lot of different parts of technology, but I wanted to solve the question that everyone's asking. And there isn't a clear solution to it. But yeah, that talk with my professor was one of the first things that really changed my life. Especially in law school, you learn you have to cite to everything. In each sentence, you have to have a citation to something relevant. Otherwise, people won't believe you. So I was coming down from that mindset and then hearing, no, like I know something and I don't have to cite to it because I'm the one that knows that and is capable of having that knowledge. And there's nothing else out there that I can cite to. So that imposter syndrome was pretty challenging to overcome, but I'm very glad that I was able to publish this paper, have a ton of intelligent minds at the Washington Journal of Law, Technology, and Arts help out with the paper, check the sources, see that this is a real thing. And over time, seeing the amount of people recognizing it is it really warms my heart. Like the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has given an award for this research, which is really, really meaningful, especially seeing how big government agencies can easily be hacked or exploited through this technique. So all of that has meant a lot and has helped to push forth and push forward all of this research. And even getting to talk at my college is so lovely and amazing. I really wanted Binghamton to be some of the first people that get to hear about and learn this and get me to speak on it, especially when things were picking up, because Binghamton College is one of the many steps that I took in order to get to where I am today, and I'm very grateful for that.
And the people working on this topic coming in after you will be citing your work as they go forward to do the research they're doing. And I have my email address again on the screen, so if you have any questions, send them in. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to read one. It's a little bit long that we got on email. I think this will be good. I retired from the federal government, where I did computer security in the office of the secretary of a large agency. I heard about a government-wide system and was curious one day about security. I did a couple of searches on quote unquote top secret, quote nuclear plans, and other sensitive topics, and got a lot of material from various agencies that could not be possibly intended to be open. I did not report it. If I had, the question would immediately be, was this in my area of responsibility? Obviously not. And the question would then be whether I had found other material I should not have found and was reporting this to cover my tracks. Clearly, I would have been in serious trouble. I'm not sure how someone can explore for weaknesses in systems for which they are not responsible without facing a similar jeopardy. Any ideas? I mean, it sounds like this goes back to the conundrum of the ethical hackers, and and how they do what they do and manage to not get prosecuted.
Yeah, and this is why I'm so passionate about this topic, is exactly that, and great work with that project as well. I think that that's very interesting, and it is a weird feeling to stumble upon this sensitive information that's so shocking, and to know that it shouldn't be there. And it's interesting, your point and your perspective of being scared of, like, what if I had disclosed that? There are some places where people are interested in hearing if their information's exposed, but as noted before, there are times when it's not safe, and that's something that scares me, because in the US, we're actually like somehow sometimes like the most prone to cyber attacks. Obviously, we're targeted a lot, which makes sense, but also the fact that our systems are the most vulnerable sometimes, and the fact that we don't have many laws in place addressing this, and it seems like there's discrepancies between the legal field and the cybersecurity community. All of these things contribute to us being huge targets and very vulnerable. So I believe that we should be encouraging ethical hackers to be involved. We should be rewarding them when they stumble upon information and let us know, hey, by the way, this is exposed online. So currently, the fact that ethical hackers could get in trouble if a company doesn't want to know or would rather hide it, that's dangerous, and it's something that needs to be changed, when we should be actually working alongside ethical hackers, doing whatever we can to protect them so that they can tell us what the vulnerabilities are when they find them in a safe manner that protects them, so that we can build our systems to be more secure and better. Like, the fact that we even have ethical hackers that are able to use their powers for good, you cannot stop against a hacker without utilizing a hacker. So the fact that we have hackers that identify as good and legal and morally, ethically good, and hackers that know that they go beyond the line, that's an amazing thing that we should be taking advantage of, rewarding, and trying to protect and encourage, because maybe that whole distinction and that whole disconnect is why we're so easy to hack, why our laws are so behind on this topic. And if we fix that and bridge that gap, which is something I'm very passionate about doing with my two communities that I love so much, we're gonna finally be a little bit more up to date on these issues and a little less easy to hack. Because obviously, if those government entities knew that their confidential information was exposed, they would fix the vulnerability, and then that information wouldn't be exposed. And you can only imagine the types of people that would exploit that information and use it for bad.
Not much difference in the sense from, say, internal audits. Tell me where the vulnerabilities are. Let's just say I have a business like a casino, lots of money, lots of places where it could disappear. Tell me where that could happen, because we want to make that not happen.
Mm-hmm. And I think that a issue that comes up often is the dilemma that ethical hackers have when they inform a company and the company does not take their advice and work on it. When an ethical hacker informs a company, hey, your customers like private financial data and sensitive personal data is exposed online, like please fix this, and they give them a certain amount of time. Then on the ethical hacker end, legally, or to be as best protected by law, that's all you can do really. But they then have the ethical and moral dilemma of, should I let these people know that their data is exposed online? Should I circumvent the business? Should I post it online? Hey, there's been a data breach, so that innocent civilians can be protected because the business isn't doing good. And some people do that, and then they get into trouble because they're circumventing the business even though the business didn't answer. And they might be posting also sensitive personal information online by doing that, or letting other people know that there's a vulnerability prone to exploitation. So that's kind of where there's a moral dilemma of ethical hackers who are morally ethical and they really want to help when they feel very helpless and unprotected by the law as well.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so I think it's time for one more question, and then we'll get to the point where we start to wrap things up. Just kind of curious, because you've presented this in person at conferences at Brooklyn Law School and other places. What sorts of reactions do you get in person when you show these things, in particular how easy it is to find this information that really shouldn't be easily found?
Yeah, so my favorite reactions came from my Brooklyn Law School presentation because I collaborated with an ethical hacker community known as OwlSec on that project. I had Jimmy and Kevin, two ethical hackers, come and show us, because it was at my law school. I wasn't going to do a demonstration myself, but I wanted them to audit and see which cameras were safe to pull up, which password files were safe to pull up. So they kind of ran through, what part of the hacking process would Google Dorking be in? And it's the information gathering stage, the first stage of conducting more serious hacks. And they walked through the hacks that I like to show, getting into people's web cameras, showing passwords. Jimmy showed his own personal information that might be exposed online and how to find that. And the reactions in the audience were priceless. My professor that I actually was working with on this research so long ago, he said that it was just the most incredible thing to see these two young men pull up web cameras and passwords in a matter of seconds, because it's, even though I showed in this presentation, like what I typed into the search engine, it's not like you can't replicate how fast and easy it is unless you see someone doing it. So that aspect of just having the ethical hackers walk through it, and that was being like live streamed to us on a screen. Everyone was shocked, and the Go Dork Yourself we had a little more time for. So people in the audience themselves were finding their passwords, were finding all these files that they didn't know were exposed about them online. So those reactions are just priceless, and it motivates me even more to continue this research because it affects everyone. People see the title of this and they think, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not interested in cybersecurity. I'm not interested in search engine hacking. I don't know. I've never heard of that in my life. They don't realize this affects every single person, whether you're on the ethical hacker researcher side or you're an average user, an average internet user who might have a camera in your child's bedroom, who might have a Ring doorbell, who might have a camera on your laptop, or might have passwords exposed or credit card numbers exposed online. So it really just impacts everyone. And I knew that showing this mix of cases and Google Dorks would just get everyone to realize this is a huge issue, and we have to figure out how to address it and how to solve for this problem.
That's one of the reasons why I felt so strongly about wanting to have this program. You said it very well. It touches us all. It's easy to look at search engine hack and say, I'm good. It doesn't affect me. And when you get to diving into the topic more, realize, wow, this is scary. And you start to see it in action. And you think about, what am I going to find if I plug in these things with my name into the search engine, and what's it going to pull up? And do I want to know what's there? You may not want to, you should know what's there. So it's a great public interest offering for us to do this. And then because this is so new and having a Binghamton alumna as a leading researcher, I said, we got to jump on this before everybody starts to see it everywhere else. And then we're kind of late to the game. We can be among the first. So I'm so thankful you were willing to spend the time with us. I know you have a ton going on, especially being new in the legal field and having tremendous demands on your time to set aside an hour and a half with us during the workday
Thanks for
to share
having
this information. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And that's going to wind it up for today. And our next webinar is going to be in January. The date we're looking at is January 30th. And the topic will be artificial intelligence, AI. We'll have some marketing messages go out in a couple of weeks, probably once we get through the holidays and everybody's out of that holiday mode and they're paying attention again. We'll start to plug this program early in the new year in 2024, the upcoming webinar on artificial intelligence with an alumni expert who will be our featured speaker on that program. So just one more time, pull up the link for the website, binghamton.edu/alumni. As I said, right there on the homepage, you can watch. There's the link for the tier talk that we had at homecoming. We had a talk about campus ghost stories with Professor Libby Tucker. It was a great program. She is just fabulous. So check that out when you can. We'll also have links on there to other things you may be interested in person and virtual events, volunteer opportunities, ways that you can stay engaged with us here at the university. So thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of the day. We'll see you on the next webinar.